We all assume trust in our civil servants. Following detailed background checks, criminal record checks, and general aptitude tests, they are all hired in their position to help the general public. But what exactly happened to Uyinene Mrwetyana when she placed her trust in Luyanda Bota? And, following his actions, how did he ignite nationwide protests? Welcome back to Coffeehouse Crime. My name is Adrian, and in today's video we'll be talking about the tragic case of Uyinene Mrwetyana. Uyinene's disappearance sparked a nationwide wave of protests and activism across all of South Africa. But what exactly were the tragic events which brought us here? Just to let you know, I post solved, unsolved and strange cases here on a weekly basis, so if that sounds like your kind of thing, please consider subscribing to Coffeehouse Crime. So let's dive straight into today's case. Pull up a seat, grab a coffee and sit back. This is the case of Uyinene Mrwetyana. Our story today takes us back to one of my most requested countries. Welcome to the vibrant and lively lands of South Africa. From beautiful blue coastlines to sprawling savannas, South Africa is a country with plenty of natural beauty, making it an extremely popular place to visit. Erupting from its outstanding nature, South Africa is also home to many multiple cities, the biggest being Johannesburg, with a massive population of over 9 million residents. This is followed by Cape Town, with a more modest community of 4 million people. Located on South Africa's beautiful western coastline, Cape Town is the oldest of South Africa's cities, and is often nicknamed as the Mother City for this reason. It's a bustling metropolis which boasts strong economic ties due to its harbour, tourism and education, with thanks to its highest-ranking university in Africa, the University of Cape Town. And it's here, at the University of Cape Town, that we meet 19-year-old student Uyinene Mrwetyana. Uyinene was born on the 20th of April 2000 to her parents Philip and Nene Mrwetyana in East London. But don't get confused, as the East London I'm referring to is a city in the southeast of South Africa, not a part of England's capital city. Alongside her older brother Isona, Uyinene grew up with loving parents, and at home her family would affectionately give her the nickname Nene. The family home can be found in the picturesque suburb of Beacon Bay, where Uyinene attended Hudson Park Primary School, an English-speaking school in the local area. And moving on from primary school, Uyinene was enrolled at Kingswood College, which was a highly regarded local high school. Academically speaking, Uyinene was extremely bright. She held high enthusiasm for school and her studies, and of course this made her parents extremely proud. And while attending high school, she was part of the student council, receiving the Hudsonian of the Year award for her achievements. Academic ambitions aside, Uyinene also loved to play sports, and she attended many sporting events after school. She also cherished her friends and was a social butterfly. Throughout her teenage years, Uyinene found passion in the film and media industry, and as a result she applied for the University of Cape Town after graduating from high school. This would eventually take Uyinene to the other side of the country for her studies, far away from her former life with friends, family and familiar faces. But Uyinene was a very strong, self-confident young woman, and she knew that she could achieve almost anything that she set her sights on. And so, in the year 2019, Uyinene took the plunge and moved to Cape Town for her studies, enrolling into the university's film and media course. Smooth, like the rolling grasslands of the savannah, her first year in university started without a hitch, finding residence at one of the student halls, Roscommon's house. Uyinene began her studies and quickly gained many new friends around her. She happily enrolled into sports societies and really wanted to become part of the student community. She was young, bubbly, beautiful, and an outwardly warm young woman, so naturally, people gravitated towards her. But very little did Uyinene know, of all the new people that she was meeting, one of them one day would wish to cause her harm. The 24th of August 2019 was a sunny day in the coastal city of Cape Town. It was the late morning when Uyinene Mrwetyana left her residence of Roscommon House in order to run a few errands. She had recently ordered some new clothes online, which were set to arrive at the local post office for collection. Her phone illuminated with a text message. It would be ready and in store today. She had previously been to the post office on August the 8th, where she spoke to a member of staff who told her that he'd been in contact with her when her parcel came in. Uyinene was in no rush. She decided to take the short walk to Clarence Post Office, where she expected to pick up her package. And upon walking in, she was greeted by the same attendant she had spoken to on a previous visit, a 42-year-old man named Luyanda Bota. He told Nene her parcel was not yet ready for collection due to a power cut, and asked her to return later in the afternoon. Uyinene saw nothing wrong with this request. Power cuts are very common in Cape Town. No worries, she thought. She would just have to come back in a few hours. Walking out of the post office, she planned to return later that day. Here's the first of many problems about this story. Her parcel was actually already ready to be picked up. In fact, it had been there for an entire 8 days before she walked in. She just didn't know it. This wasn't the only peculiar detail. Luyanda told Nene to return to the post office at around 2 p.m. Which is strange because on a Saturday, the post office closes at 1 p.m. Again, Uyinene wasn't made aware. So, why was Luyanda withholding this information from Nene? Unfortunately, not much is known about Luyanda Botha. However, he did have a criminal record, and in the year 1999, he was convicted on multiple robbery charges, serving 8 years behind bars. He was also accused with indecent assault against a woman. However, these accusations were ultimately withdrawn, and the charges dropped. It is unclear why these charges were dropped, but these situations can be extremely damaging and difficult for a victim, causing them to withdraw accusations in order to avoid shame and negative attention. It is strange, however, how a person with a history of robbery and assault would be allowed to work in a post office, a place that deals with large amounts of money and customers. Nevertheless, Luyanda's history was concerning at best, and his present life wasn't without its faults either, as he was currently going through a divorce with his second wife. Before August the 8th, Nene had never met this man in her life. She had no reason to be concerned or suspicious over his request to come back later. She rightfully trusted a civil servant. As the sun cast short shadows across Cape Town, the post office shut as scheduled at 1 p.m, and its staff members slowly trickled out the front door, heading home for the rest of the day. Earlier that afternoon, Luyanda rearranged plans with his colleague Soraya. He insisted he could close and lock up the post office, persuading her to go home and relax on time. This ultimately leaving Luyanda as the only person after 1 p.m. That would be until 2 p.m, when shortly after this, a taxi arrived outside of the branch. As the passenger door opened, out stepped Nene, busily tapping away on her phone, messaging friends and family. Unaware of the silence, she walked up to the front door of the post office. And as the door opened, she entered, taking several steps in as the door was shut behind her. And unbeknownst to her and the rest of Cape Town, this was the last time anyone would ever see Uyinene Mrwetyana alive again. The last person to see her was a taxi driver, as he drove away in broad daylight, not realising that he would be the last one to see the young woman's smile. Uyinene was a popular girl. She had many friends, most of which she kept in regular contact with, just like her family. The other students in her residence were quick to notice her absence, and as the hours ticked by with no message from their daughter, her family started to grow worried. By nightfall, it was clear that something bad had happened to Nene. The abrupt silence was out of character, and her roommates confirmed that she had no plans to be away for the night. On August the 26th, 2 days after she was last seen, authorities were notified and missing persons bulletins were distributed throughout the city of Cape Town. Massive search efforts were organised by police, with hundreds of volunteers contributing to the cause. Many of these volunteers being university students, friends, family, and the general public. Uyinene's university friends took to social media to help spread the word, and the online response was immediate. The hashtag #BringNene began trending across all of South Africa. The way in which the people of Cape Town came together to try and find Uyinene Mrwetyana is a testament to the community of the city. Banners were flown from bridges, candlelight vigils were attended, and mass prayers were held. In addition to Cape Town's public police force, Uyinene's family hired several private investigators in hopes to accelerate her discovery. They were hoping to find Nene alive and well, having possibly been kidnapped for human trafficking, as unfortunately, it's quite common for young women in South Africa. The search was widespread, and with such a clear trail left behind by Nene, it wasn't too difficult to find out where she'd started. Clarence Post Office was the last place she'd been seen. Her taxi driver had come forward to confirm that this was the last place he had dropped her off. Considering the news, police officers decided to physically examine the post office with a blacklight, and what they found near the safe were traces of blood. And just several hours later, rapid DNA testing confirmed authorities' greatest concerns. It matched the DNA of Uyinene Mrwetyana. Unfortunately, the post office had no operational surveillance cameras. But despite this, it didn't take long for officers to draw one potential suspect. With her last confirmed sighting and her blood at the post office, the spotlight firmly landed on anyone who may have been present at the given time and location. And there was only one employee left to lock up at the time Nene went missing. the very same employee who had become absent from work in the following days. This circumstantial evidence was already enough to bring Luyanda in under suspicion of involvement of Uyinene's disappearance. And on August the 29th, 5 days after she had vanished, Luyanda was officially arrested and charged. Luyanda's reaction said it all. He had hardly resisted arrest, instead coming in quietly, knowing that he was unlikely to get himself out of this situation. Family, friends and the community held its breath for Nene, holding on to the small slither of hope that this man would lead them to her alive and well. But sadly, this would not be the case. Following lengthy interrogation on the same night as his arrest, he confessed to officers where exactly they could find Nene. He said that she could be found by the side of an unused railway track in West Lingaluthu. Upon this confession, officers had realised that they had actually found Nene already. A routine police patrol had discovered her body a whole 4 days prior, on the very same day all of those missing persons bulletins had swept the city. She wasn't identified earlier, as sadly, her body had been charred and burned beyond recognition. This means that over the same time social media, candlelight vigils and search parties erupted throughout Cape Town, Uyinene was already dead, her body with the coroner's office. DNA confirmed this story shortly after. The revelation was devastating to all of those who knew Uyinene. This wasn't the news they were hoping for, and what lay ahead of them now was the long road to recovery. Following his arrest, further analysis was conducted at his home and on his possessions, and unfortunately, when investigating his vehicle, they found Uyinene's blood present throughout. Luyanda was hopelessly becoming tangled in his own evidence. In what seemed to be a sudden moment of remorse, he therefore agreed to disclose all information about the proceedings of this fateful day. And Luyanda recounted the events of the 24th of August in horrific detail, reciting it as if it were an essay. Carrying on from where the taxi driver last saw her, Uyinene entered the post office to be greeted by Luyanda. He shut the door behind her, making sure to discreetly lock her inside. Uyinene walked up to the counter and began to sift through her handbag, looking for a purse to pay the customs fee on her parcel. And in this moment, Luyanda began to advance on her, in which Nene became very distressed. A struggle broke out between the two, leading to Nene being sexually assaulted by Luyanda. She tried to fight him off of her all the meanwhile. Uyinene eventually managed to break free from the man and run to the front door, but after finding it locked, she turned around to see Luyanda once again approaching her. He knocked her to the ground, grabbed her by the leg, and dragged her back to the post office's safe, where she was then put in it and locked inside. Uyinene screamed for help, but her cries were hopeless. To silence her, she was hit across the head with a 2-kilogram packaging weight, tragically dealing the fatal blow. And in this exact moment of time, Luyanda understood the consequences of his actions, and knew what he had to do next. But before anything else, he left Nene lying on the post office floor as he left to go to the local liquor store. He then sat down outside and consumed alcohol until his memory would serve him poorly. He then returned to the post office, covered Nene's body in cushions, a blanket and a t-shirt, and left her locked in the safe until nightfall. And returning shortly before midnight, he commenced the cleanup process, removing as much of Nene's blood as possible. Once Luyanda had parked his car in the yard, he hauled Nene's body from the safe, which was now wrapped in postal bags. He carried her out of the building and loaded her into his car, where he then drove off, with Nene in the trunk. Heading to West Lingaluthu, he found himself next to the abandoned train track. And after she was buried, the site was set alight with gasoline in a lazy attempt to destroy all evidence. As we all know, Luyanda would not succeed in his attempts, and the trail of evidence that he left behind would lead to his arrest only 5 days later. This crime had visibly shaken the entire country of South Africa, and it highlights an issue that many women face on a day-to-day basis here. Uyinene was attacked by a civil servant, someone you should be able to trust. Seething hatred for Luyanda swept throughout the entire country, and crowds gathered in their thousands outside of the courthouse to await for his final verdict. Luyanda confessed to 2 counts of sexual assault, 1 count of murder, and a further count of defeating the administration of justice for attempting to hide evidence. As a result, he was sentenced to not 1 but 3 life sentences, and 5 years for hiding evidence. These sentences are to be served consecutively, though he will be eligible for parole after 25 years.
On the count 1, which is in short, life imprisonment. Count 2, which is life imprisonment. On count 3, for the unlawful And wrongful killing, which is the murder of Uyinene, life imprisonment. And count 4, 5 years direct imprisonment, which essentially is defeating or obstruction of the administration of justice by disposing of her body, setting it alight, and cleaning up various forensic evidence in the course of obstructing the administration of justice.
What frustrates me about this case more than anything else is how little he regarded her life. He viewed her entire future as less important than a moment of his own pleasure, which is just fucking vile. Following Luyanda's sentencing, discussions on the rate of femicide in the country began to circulate. As in South Africa, an average of 8 women are killed by men every day. Proportional to population, that's 5 times higher than the global average. Statistically speaking, Uyinene's death was just one of these 8 in a single day, and this notion sparked anger amongst the public, demanding a change in law. The Am I Next campaign hit major cities across the country, with physical protests and demonstrations in front of many major government buildings.
The men who are here with us, we want you to stand with us. We want you to stand with us and join us in saying enough is enough.
The activism was widespread online as well. Women were asking for harsher punishments, and for all offenders to be publicly registered to avoid giving power to people who may abuse it. Following countrywide protests and widespread uproar, President Cyril Ramaphosa announced ongoing reforms to the law to implement a national council against gender-based violence and femicide. However, 2 years later, these plans are still to be realised. The Uyinene Mrwetyana Foundation was founded in the wake of her passing. The foundation continues to help people to this day, providing mental health advice and support for victims of gender-based violence, and campaigning to solidify further changes in the law to allow the voice of South African women to be heard. Uyinene Mrwetyana was a vibrant and charismatic 19-year-old woman, who nobody could argue was taken from this world far before her time. Those in her hometown of East London, the students of the University of Cape Town, and women across South Africa all feel that they have lost a bright soul in August of 2019. She is remembered by loved ones as a person who stood out from the crowd. She was bubbly, kind, and caring. She brought light and positive energy to everyone that she engaged with. Uyinene was known to put everything she had into life and truly connected to those around her. And in a bittersweet sense, she still manages to connect to people even after her passing.
So I am Nene.
Uyinene's image is now used to help put an end to women's suffering and to help those who have already suffered. I'll leave a link to her foundation in the video description down below. You can find plenty of information there, and also a donations link if it's within your consideration. And as a final note, I wish Uyinene's family and friends all the very best in finding peace through their recovery. And that just about does it for today's case, folks. Thank you so much for watching another video today by Coffeehouse Crime. If you found this video interesting or insightful, then please remember to like the video and subscribe if you haven't yet. As always, please share your thoughts in the comments section down below. Thank you again so much for watching, folks, and I'll see you again real soon in the next one. Until that moment arrives though, look after each other. Goodbye.